I think a lot of times that, people don't recognize their saboteurs and they don't recognize how it's impacting their business, to how it's impacting their relationships, and, when I was talking to this one client about his controller, he wasn't allowing him to accept feedback. And I think when you don't accept feedback, it only sets you up for more stress and redoing things over and over. And, he does a great job in what he does. He's very skilled at what he does. And it takes a lot to get, to surrender your controller in situations when you feel overwhelmed because you're trying to control the outcome of what you're trying to do. Our controller saboteur is a very, very tough thing for business owners specifically when it comes into play, because when you're a business owner and you love what you do and you love the things that you're working on, and you try to give them to somebody else, or you relinquish some of that to somebody else, the controller really peeks in and is like, no, I'll just do it my way. I'll just do it the way I got it done. And you just set yourself up for so much extra work sometimes because you're not open to hearing what other people are saying, right? And then the hyperachiever kind of kicks in too. Like, you're controlling the situation, and then your hyperachiever is like, let's just get to the result. And then you're not really listening to anybody. You're not taking any feedback. So one of the things that a lot of people have to work on, especially this one particular individual, is he has to start to focus on asking for feedback, and he can somewhat control that. Like, he can control when he asks for that feedback, and he's still utilizing the control aspects, but he's not being the controller in that situation because he is taking the feedback. And you also get very defensive, and that's part of conscious leadership too, is you've got to stay above the line and not be defensive about things and just really see them for what they are and remain curious. So, like, to combat the controller, you got to remain curious. And I think that's the thing that I want to make sure that we communicate to people that are struggling with their controllers, is that the best way the antidote, to use our, terms from our book, the antidote is really to remain curious and open to conversation. And the more curious you are, the more insights you're going to get, and the better your work is going to be in the end.
But then, like, I struggle with the controller. Well, maybe I don't struggle with it. I'm very aware that is one of my biggest, I don't know if it's a sabotaging behavior, but it's one of my most regular behaviors that comes out. Maybe it's not sabotaging because I'm more aware about it, but that's my biggest priority. I even have it written down in front of me that I always keep it here: the ability to explore, discover, and create as I wish, which essentially is just learning, right? It's being open to learning, being open to finding new things. The problem with someone who has this controller saboteur, the second you learn, you're like, now I know what I'm doing.
Right.
It's like, now I know what I'm doing, and we're going to do it this way. And if you try to give me feedback, no, you can't give me feedback because I just learned how to do it. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, you read a book. That guy has been doing it for 25 years. Maybe you should listen to him.
Right, exactly. Remember that the impact on you is one thing. Like, when your controller prevents you from growing and learning and doing what you're supposed to do, right? That's all sabotaging habits, right? It blocks you from getting what you're supposed to get out of it. But the flip side is your saboteur has a negative impact on the other people that are in your environment, because it can make you look standoffish, or it can make you look like you don't want anybody's feedback and you just want to do it your way. And that could silence somebody who wants to raise an opinion or say something and is not comfortable doing in that environment. So it's not that it's good to be aware of it, but part of being aware of it is also being aware of how somebody else is interpreting your behavior, your tone, all that stuff. And that's where it could be sabotaging to not just you as the individual, but to the group of you that are working on whatever it is that you're working on.
Makes sense.
So there's a lot. The saboteurs impact just the person. And I really haven't talked a lot about that. Now that I think about that, I have to start to think about more the impact on other people, right? Because you have employees and you have people that work for you. And, when you have that, you want to make sure you're managing your sabotaging habits, because there is a really big impact on the employees that you're working with. So that or working for you. Yeah.
Well, that's come up recently too, right? Where we're actually, they have expectations of their employees, and then it works, right? And it's like, all of a sudden, all the employees are doing what they're supposed to. And I know, you had a client that was dealing with that recently, or we had a client, but you dealt with it mostly. Why don't you tell the story?
Yeah. So, I mean, when employees start doing the jobs that you expect them to do, you start to recognize the value of what that brings to you and what it allows you to do. And it actually allows you as the CEO of that company to go do your job. I mean, it allows you to go raise, generate the revenue and work on the processes and the people and the product and the process, and it allows you to go and do your actual job. And that is something that is an amazing experience for someone to experience for the first time, right? It's like that newness of, oh my God, people actually can do their job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, I don't have to be the one to do that. So I got somebody else to do that. Well, what do I do? And they struggle with what they're supposed to do. And they struggle with the time that they've been given, the extra space that they've been given to do their work. And now it's like, all right, what could you go out there and work on that you haven't had the opportunity to work on, right? Like the problem list, right? We talk about the problem list all the time. That's a great time to attack something on the problem list when your employees are doing what they're supposed to do and you have actual time freed up to do the things that you would like to get to and start to do so that you can build your business and grow your business and move it forward.
It's nice to have people have the ability to do that. But what we see many times with business owners, they finally get in the position, they're like, wow, they work so hard to hire these employees, and they hired them. They're working. Everything's kind of doing exactly what they dreamed of, but now they don't know how to be. And they had an idea, right? They had this idea of like, okay, I'll hire employees. I'll produce more revenue. It'll free up time so I can go do this thing, whatever this thing was. And then it comes to the point where they can actually do it. And they really, either they didn't want to do it, or they're not ready to do it, or they're scared shitless to go do it. So what we see a lot of times is this is when it's a sabotaging behavior. I don't know what you would classify it under, but this is when they actually create new problems that aren't necessary to deal with because they're like, wait a minute, everything's going too smooth and it becomes super unfamiliar. And then either they sit and they procrastinate about things that have to get done. And what I've observed is they do that because they need it to become a problem. So now they have a value in the company again. Or they have this thing, they're like, I'm going to, once I have my time back, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to more conferences or something like that, or whatever it is. And then they're like, I can go to more conferences. Like, well, I'll wait for the perfect conference to come up to go to. And it's like, yeah, but this is what you wanted to do. Are you going to do it? And I believe either you need to buckle down and do those things. And obviously, this is why we're coaches, right? We sit in this, it's not just like a magic wand and all of a sudden you're fixed, but like you got to buckle down and do this, okay? Or you have to realize like, hey man, this is not what I wanted. Because a lot of the times people will get there and they're like, I actually didn't want all this free time. I enjoyed doing that work. I just thought if I had free time, this other thing that I'm going to do now is valuable to the company, but they're not good at it. They don't want to do it. They don't enjoy it. And it's like, what situation did I put myself in? And then they sabotage the productivity of those great employees they hired.
What happens a lot of times too, to that point, is you wind up slipping back into a comfort zone because you've been doing this thing over and over. And now that your employees are doing it, you recognize, oh no, I have to come out of another comfort zone, right? Like that cycle, excuse me, that cycle continues, right? We go through the 4 cycles of comfort to fear to learning to growth, comfort, fear, learning to growth. And a lot of times when we have people doing the right things and they're doing it the right way and we don't have to be concerned about that, well, then it's like, all right, what do I do? And if I get comfortable with that, I'm not going to grow as a human being. I'm not going to grow as a boss. I'm not going to grow as anybody. So what we have to be willing to do is then walk back into that fear zone. And part of that fear zone is, oh my God, did I put myself out of a job? Did I put myself, now that I have all these great people working for me, what is my value? And then you have to remember, oh, let me go learn what I'm supposed to do next. Let me go figure out what I'm supposed to do next so I can grow back into that. And I think that's really where a lot of people get nervous, is in that I'm leaving this comfort zone, but I've been doing this without all these people for so long. What do I do now?
Well, what I usually see them do now is they typically create money issues, and it's like they're like, oh, I have these employees, and then they start actually making more money, and then they decide I'm going to spend it on things that they never even planned on, right? They're gonna buy a new truck, or they're gonna hire an executive assistant, or they're gonna buy $10,000 worth of branded materials, or invest in a person to do their, engagement on social media. It's like all this stuff, and they spend it and it becomes familiar to them. And then they just expect, okay, it's because these employees are doing the job they're doing, money's just going to come in, free flow. And then they stop doing what got them there. And that's typically what creates those money issues, is like there were certain things that had to take place. And even though these employees are doing what they're supposed to do, usually a founder hires employees to take the workload that was caused by the work that they did. And then when the employees come in, they slowly stop doing that work that caused the need for these employees. And then they're like, hey, how come work's not coming in? And how come, I have all these employees, why aren't you doing their jobs? And then they expect the employees to do new roles like sales or this or that. And like, I don't understand why things aren't coming in, and they compensate with causing new problems that usually cost new money. And then they have this, it goes into a funnel, and it's like, okay, I don't have money coming in, and more money's going out, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse until they don't know what to do. And usually their first response is like, I'm going to fire these people. They're not doing their jobs. And it's like, actually, the company's not doing what it used to when you brought these people in. And these money issues are the most painful thing that people go through, is realizing that, holy shit, I have a new responsibility of money that needs to be produced by our company every single month. And when, we've gone through it with our clients, we've seen them go from like $3,000 of expenses. Some of our clients have 100,000 plus in expenses now per month. And it's like, well, I have to produce 180 grand just to, kind of make enough of a profit to pay myself and pay these extra things. And then they start freaking out, and it's like, what am I going to do? And then desperation mode kicks in, and they start making a lot of bad decisions, right? But it stems typically from them forgetting what got them here, and it's fine. It's fine if you hire the employees and you want them to do the things that got you here, but you need to see them actually doing that regularly, because what got you here in the beginning was typically you. And of course, we want you to have an evolution and be able to become the CEO and take on roles either that you really love to do or you're excellent at, but you can't forget along the way, like, holy shit, and essentially, I got to go keep selling stuff. Like, and that's what got you to this situation of being able to hire employees, is you sold stuff, right? And you can't stop doing that. And it's not going to be just because you have a higher payroll and more expenses that you can now sell higher products. Like, you might have to go back to the things that got you here again, and those little transactions and those basic products, and grinding it out at events that you didn't want to go to, and picking up the phone and calling people that you didn't necessarily think you should be doing anymore. But that's what maintains the business.
Mm-hmm. You're bringing up so many points that I want to jump all over, but a lot of times that overwhelm that they create because they're not doing what they were doing to bring the money in to start with, they then create even more problems and create more overwhelm, and they forget that their job is to work the problem, to come up with the solution. We are a lot, and I see this a lot with people who are very inexperienced business owners who were employees for a long time before they went into their own business. When you're an employee of a company, you don't always have to be the problem solver. That gets escalated to the upper echelon, right? They fix the problem, and then depending what level you were at, you're getting directive on how to roll out what the fix is. But when you become a business owner and you have problems, you can't cry like a little bitch and worry about like you want somebody to cuddle you and comfort you and be like, hey, mommy, I'm not doing so great. Like I got all this happening. And it's, the answer is work the problem. What are the things, one thing at a time? What's the most critical thing at the moment? And that's what you have to identify. When you're struggling with money specifically and money issues, you may have a bad money relationship, and that's a money mindset issue, which is part of this contributing factor, because employees that we used to living paycheck to paycheck aren't necessarily used to having money, knowing what to do with it, and as fast as it comes in, it goes out the door. But you have to work the problem and organize each issue as its own and really ask the hard questions. Is this really a problem right now? Like somebody reached out to us earlier today, and There's a family issue. There's a business equipment issue. There's a cash flow issue, and then there's the chaos of something not being good in the home, right? Something broke and there's mold and whatever. But I was like, all right, is the person in the hospital stable? And he said, yes, she's stable right now. I said, great. Live off of the stability of that and don't let that be a problem for you.
Right.
Solve that number one problem, right? Then the next thing was, all right, I'm waiting for a check to come in, should be in by next week. Great. Make sure you follow through on that so you can make payroll next week. Then it was the house situation. And the house situation, I'm like, did you put an insurance claim in? He said, yeah. I said, the insurance going to pay for it? Yeah. I said, you worried about cooking food in the house? You got to leave somewhere. And did they give you a food voucher? He said, yeah, they're sending me a food voucher from the insurance company because stuff got destroyed. I said, great. I said, do you have a barbecue? He said, yeah. I said, well, what food can you cook on the barbecue? He said, oh, I didn't think of that. Barbecue. He said, go to Home Depot and buy a couple of hot plates or one of those stores and go buy some hot plates and cook outside. You don't have to do takeout. You don't have to, but we get so overwhelmed when we feel like everything is hitting us all at one time that we forget to work the initial problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have to really take the time to do is break it down one issue at a time and come up with what's the solution and what's the status of that problem so that it's not a problem any longer. And I always say, if money can fix it, there is no problem. It's not a real problem. I know I took that from somebody, but I've said that several times, and we have to just change our perspective. Yes, things are chaotic right now. Things are falling apart. There's a lot of chaos in the outside world, but if we consume that chaos, we're going to create chaos in our own world when shit starts to fall apart. And we have to have a process to work the problem and really identify. Is this going to be a problem in 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months? And if it's not going to be a problem in 6 hours, it's not a big problem. 6 months, yeah, it could be a bigger problem. But that's my rule of 6. I don't know where I came up with that, but is it going to be a problem in 6 hours? No. 6 days? Maybe. 6 months? Not really. Okay, then it's not a big problem. Figure it out, get it done, and fix it.
Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if you're dealing with problems every single day and have no clue how to handle them, then check us out. Go to atomicbusinesscoaching.com, see what we're doing. We have the Simple CEO, which will allow you to truly become a CEO. Go check it out, atomicbusinesscoaching.com. The problem with having problems as you're a business owner is most of the newer ones, or the ones who've just achieve the next level of success, meaning employees, maybe $1 million, $2 million. The thing is what they don't realize is they are in the problem business, right? I don't care what you're selling. I don't care if you're selling ice cream cones. I don't care if you're selling coaching. I don't care if you're selling accounting or, blue collar services. You're in a problem solving business. And as you grow a company, there's other problems that come with that. And guess what? The home life problems only get exacerbated by the success of the business problems, right? Because that means the business has more demand on your time and your money, your energy, your focus. So the home doesn't get that as much, right? And it's like, if you're not going to be in the problem solving business, you can't be in any business, right? So you have to actually thrive on, okay, where's the next problem? What's the next fire I can put out? And it's like if you're constantly trying to avoid the problems or solve all the problems and have this like peace and serenity, then you probably shouldn't be a business owner, right? Because that is the game. The game is like, as soon as problems come up, I'm going to assess it, I'm going to address it, I'm going to handle it. And now what's next? Either who's going to handle that? How am I going to handle that? What money needs to go to that? What time needs to go to that? Okay? We've resolved it, or we've put it in its place. What's the next one? Because there's endless problems waiting for you. And the most successful business owners just have a better method of solving these problems, right? Whether it's them solving them, their staff solving them, their money solving them, their time solving them. It's just they have a method, because what you need to do is not necessarily solve the problem, but understand when, how, and who are gonna do that, so you can move to the next one, right? That it's very simple, but there's a lot of amateurs out there, that are they've made some money, they've had some success, and they're like, holy cow, I'm a business owner. Not really yet, like you've generated revenue, you've created a job for yourself, but you're not really a business owner. And, we talk about the CEO mindset, commitment, effort, and obsession. That's great when you're focused on one thing. But as a true owner, as a true business owner, you need to now have the ability to spread that same commitment, effort, and obsession across all the problems. And that becomes this obsession. It was like, oh, what's the next problem I get to solve? Not what's the next problem I have to solve. Woe is me. I got another problem.
Yeah.
No, it's like, woo, what's the next one? Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it on.
It can't be this drama and collapse. It's got to be bring it on. Let's go. I'm up for it. Let's make this happen. What's next? It's got to be a what's next mindset. And that's the thing that's missing here is it's not a it's like the woe is me. It's the victim. The victim saboteur comes out a lot in the situation because they don't want to solve it. They want somebody else to do it for them. And mommy and daddy aren't around to do it anymore. You got to do it yourself.
Well, the biggest problem that I'm seeing right now is the transition into Q1. And we're at the end of Q1. So we're seeing the results of the work that our clients have done in Q1. And the big problem that they didn't know they had, and now they do, and most of them are freaking out. And most of the ones who have had a new level of success, right? So 2024 was amazing for them. They broke through a certain level, and now they were like really amped up about 2025, and they've experienced their first quarter. Those ones who have broke that level and went to the next stage, they're now dealing with the problem of the transition. And what happens is, and you see this all the time, and it might not, you could save yourself in the next quarter, but what happens is they had such a good year, 2024.
Right.
And they're like, wow, okay, so now I'm pumped up. I have what I need. We're ready to go charge hard ahead for 2025 and do even better. But what the problem is nothing really changed. They expected the same results, or they expected different results without changing anything. Okay, so it's just like, all right, let me go with this flow. So now as they're in Q1, they're like, all right, well, January is going to be awesome, right? Well, no, you didn't really do much work in December except plan what you're going to do next year. You didn't actually do the work, And then they're like, okay, well, all right, so January didn't go as well as I thought. So, what should I change? And then they spend February thinking. And it's like, okay, well, I've thought a lot about it. And then in March, all the problems crescendo because they haven't been maintained day after day after day. And now they're like, oh my gosh, my bank accounts are low. My vendors aren't paying me. All these things are happening at once. And now that's when they start freaking out and they have those money issues, right? Because it all eventually becomes a money issue, right? You can solve any problem with money and any problem will turn into a money issue. They're at the bookends of everything. Okay. But what happens is they did not transition very well. Okay. They're going through and they're learning new skills and they're taking on new things and they're hiring new people and have aspirations about new types of business, but they didn't really transition. They just were like, okay, I'm here, but I'm the same person, right? And I just happen to have a few more clients or a few more employees or another offer or whatever else. And now what's going to happen is in Q2, they're almost going to have to go back to what they were last year and like restart again. So the issue that I want people hopefully to be able to solve is like, okay, well, how do I migrate from one level to the next level of my success, of my growth, of my scaling, of my family, of anything? And the thing is people want those immediate results and they expect just natural growth to happen. But it's number one is you really don't get immediate results, right? It takes a long time, and long time is different for everybody. Long time could be 6 weeks. Long time could be 6 months for someone, 6 years for others. But you have to be able to sustain your business as it was and then start growing it. What happens when you level up is you give yourself the ability to grow. You don't just grow. Okay. And what they think is like, oh, I'm just going to grow. And it's like, no, you have to sustain and maintain what you had that got you here. Now you have something extra and you either have extra time, extra money. If you're lucky, you have extra both that you can now work on this growth to make that transition and you spending time and money a different way and then spending your time and money working a different way. So you doing stuff and the company doing stuff differently, but it doesn't just magically happen. So that's what I was talking about before is you have to maintain these things okay, that got you here. And then you work on transitioning. You don't just magically transition. Okay. So that's what I'm seeing a lot of people now, because last year was a good year for a lot of our clients and a lot of people in general. It really was a good year despite what they thought. I mean, despite what the world thought and the economy thought. Like, a lot of people had tremendous growth, and it doesn't just naturally continue without you naturally continuing. But then you also have to grow, okay? And that is that transition. So anytime you're going to transition to anything, you have to think, well, what's necessary to do that? You can't think about that while you're trying to transition. It's like you have to prepare for that beforehand. And, Tom and I, we do our business plan in November. So we're ready for January. You, as a business owner, can do a business plan whenever you want. It's up to you. And you can do multiple a year, right? You can adapt as you grow, as you want to change, as you level up. But you have to really say, okay, here are the things we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, and then do it. You can't expect like, okay, and then do it, and it just works. Like, that's where all the problems come from that you get to handle. And that's when you have to work on the problem. And that's when you have to maybe have new employees, new vendors, new anything.
What I was going to say is that you make the plan and then you start to execute on the plan, and the plan doesn't go according to the plan, and get discouraged by that. Like, a lot of people get discouraged by that, and they're like, "Oh no, it's not working the way it was supposed to work. What do I do? What do I do?" And it becomes this dramatic response where we'll work the problem. Like, we rolled out our
the amateur. That's the amateur. It's like, oh no, and like, you should expect every plan that you create
to fail,
not to go according to plan.
Yeah.
I don't know about fail.
Well, right, have failures or have moments where it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work.
But it doesn't even have to be that. It's not going to happen the way you planned it. It never does. Your plan is a guide, right? And it's like, all right, here's what we're going to try and see if that works. It doesn't mean it works, right? It never does. But that's what being a pro is all about. That's what being a real business owner is all about, is saying, okay, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. And then as you execute it, handling every problem, every moment, every day, understanding that what you did is, if you're trying to 10x your business, you probably be 20x your problems. It's like, so you have to prepare for that without getting the reward of that yet.
And the other thing is if you're really good at planning, you can start to anticipate what the potential hiccups are going to be as you go forward with the plan. Like, if you prepare for the anticipated things that could go wrong, if you think a little bit further ahead, it can't, don't shake your head. I've been in that situation.
Well, because you stopped there. But what real business owners who continually grow, people who are making hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, is that there is no end to it. It's not like, oh, you can anticipate it. It's no. You build bigger problems. And, you and I were out to dinner with somebody the other night, and I asked them a simple question of, what do you think is impossible? And they gave me like such nonsense, like things that I would handle on a Tuesday morning,
right,
that they thought were impossible in their lifetime. And it's like, what happens with people who are really successful is, as soon as things start, like, you start anticipating the problems, you're like, all right, well, you deal with that. Now I'm going to build a bigger problem.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. But knowing that you have the ability. So that's what growth is. You're defining the real growth is you build a bigger problem. It's the same as if you're going to the gym and you're working out. And if you anticipate, well, you can curl 90-pound dumbbells. You don't pick up the 90-pound dumbbells. You pick up the 100-pound dumbbells.
Right.
But you see what I'm saying? You create that bigger problem. If you already know, like, it's going to be a problem at rep number 8 for that.
Right.
You're either going to say, well, I'm going to do 12 reps instead of 8, or you're like, I'm going to
go with the
heavier weight. But that's what these people do, right? That's what I've done my whole career, is you just, okay, what's the next big problem? Now, there's a risk at that too, because you could jump too quick.
Correct.
Okay, so there's a delicate balance there. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with you, is you will start anticipating your problems.
Right.
But when you get really good at that, or it's so frequent that you're so ahead of the game, your problems aren't big enough.
Well, that's very true. 100% true. That was that situation. His problems aren't big enough. When you're dealing with small, like when we raise kids, we always say, little kids, little problems, big kids, bigger problems, right? It's just a natural progression of things. There are things that you did not ever think you would deal with the teenager when the kid was 16 months old, right? Versus 16 years old. You see it differently. And that's how business is too. When you're in your infancy, those are little problems. Then you create bigger as you grow, and you have bigger problems. But bigger doesn't mean bad or worse or whatever. Big means more opportunities to solve something, more opportunities to do it. And that's the pro perspective is what's the opportunity, whether good or bad situation, what's the opportunity? What can I do to grow? What can I do to make it better? And how can I get out of this to move on to the next thing? So,
well, I don't have a big problem. I got a little one. I got to go. So,
all right. I'll see you
next week. See, problem solved. We're just going to end the podcast. See you next week, folks.
See you next week.